Next, we have Mr. Stone, must be finished with Judiciary Committee.
We did. We got done faster than you did.
Yes, you did.
That's not always the case, but not that it's a contest. Thank you for, Mr. Chair, members, hearing AB 965. For those who are incarcerated, the credit earning process is a way to ensure people get into the rehabilitative programs that we want them to do. And we've been setting up a structure that provides hope for those inside to want to do the work that we expect them to do, that they need to do in order to reduce recidivism, get back into our communities in appropriate ways. That's what the credit earning program is supposed to do. There's a bit of an issue, however, because we have a couple of categories, elderly parole and those who meet the youth offender parole requirements. The way that credits are calculated is not necessarily consistent. Under Prop 57, someone who is eligible for the youth offender parole or the elderly parole, those credits don't fold into the way we allocate credits in a predictable way. This bill is really trying to change that, and we're working very closely with CDCR to look at their processes and tailor this so that someone who has the ability to take advantage of credits, either as a youth offender or as a member who has been in prison who's over the age of 60 and been in prison for over 25 years, that they can then take advantage of the credit system. Now, this is not, as the opposition raises some concerns, a matter of letting people out of prison early. It's a matter of ensuring that people can get to a parole date and have incentives to get to a parole date and make the best possible case they can to that parole board. That's why those credits are important. That's how those incentives work for inmates on the inside. So this is an important bill, cleaning up the perspective under Prop 57, a number of the changes that have been made recently so that we can have a consistent application of credits across the board and give people on the inside the incentives the way we would like to structure them. With that, I ask for your aye votes. I do have a couple of members here, sponsors, who are supporting the bill, and I appreciate your support.
Good morning, members. My name is Taina Vargas Edmond. I'm the founder and executive director of Initiate Justice, an organization that works to end mass incarceration by activating the power of those who are directly affected by it. We're a proud co-sponsor of AB 965 for many reasons, but I'll highlight three this morning. One, California sentencing laws are extremely harsh and they remove hope from people's lives. Even with relief under youth offender or elder parole, 25 years is a very long time. The sense of hopelessness or the thought of dying in prison makes people more likely to make harmful choices that threaten the safety of the institution and perpetuate cycles of trauma and violence. Two, this bill is not about early release, but about a hearing and a chance to prove oneself ready for parole. All credit must be earned through the completion of educational and rehabilitative and self-help programs, and most people will not be released, as CDCR only finds 17 to 20% of people suitable for parole every year. This bill will merely act as an incentive for people to invest the time and work necessary to be successful members of society. And three, increasing incentives for positive programming will reduce recidivism. A 2012 CDCR report found that college graduates had a 5% recidivism rate compared to a matched comparison group that had a 21% recidivism rate. A 2018 Initiate Justice survey found that 80% of people with youth offender hearings are participating in rehabilitative programs, and 70% of them are in school, proving that they are motivated to turn their lives around and deserve a chance to come home sooner. The Prop 57 regulation should have included people eligible for youth offender and elderly parole, but technicalities in how those laws were written made it so the administration believed that they could not include them in credits. This bill would correct that and would present an opportunity for us to begin to end our addiction to punishment and focus on solutions that actually make our community safer. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Next witness.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Richard Mireles, and I'm a member of Initiate Justice. This is my first opportunity to advocate outside of the prison gates since being released just 12 days ago. I was in prison for 20 years, 7 months, and 21 days. I was sentenced to 25 years to life at the age of 20. At that time, I couldn't fathom the opportunity for freedom, but here I am. After nearly a year in, I knew I needed to change. At the end of 1999, with the help of God and family, I embarked on a new path. I started living responsibly and never received a rules violation while incarcerated. I earned a Bachelor's of Science degree and became one of 7 to receive senatorial recognition as a state-certified alcohol and drug counselor sponsored by the CROP organization. In addition, I heavily participated in self-help rehabilitative programming. Prop 57 allowed for me to get to my parole board hearing 9 months early, but I was not allowed to earn any time off of my youth offender parole date. Senate Bills 260, 261, AB 1308, and Prop 57 created hope for many of my incarcerated friends who couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. But there are too many people still inside who are working extremely hard to better themselves with no hope of coming home anytime sooner. For example, my best friend, Ted Gray, has been in prison for 19 years, and he's the hardest working man I know. He just completed his master's degree and leads many self-help groups. But because of existing law, all credits he earns will come off of his original sentence of 40 years to life, not his youth offender parole date of 25 years. If AB 965 passes, he could go to board sooner and have the chance to be recognized for his hard work, as I was. I'm fortunate that I was able to earn time off my sentence. Unfortunately, there are many people who work just as hard as I did, but they have to remain in prison. Youth offenders like Ted will eventually get out of prison, and I believe the public would prefer if they were released a few years earlier because they worked extra hard to earn their freedom through a great commitment to their own rehabilitation. I respectfully urge your aye vote for AB 965. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Name and organization.
Margo George, California Public Defenders Association, in support.
Kathy Scher, ACLU of California, in support.
Marissa Gonzalez with the National Association of Social Workers in support.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Christine Boyd with Initiate Justice, and I support.
Jasmine Amons, National Center for Youth Law, in support.
On a man in prison advocate, and since the implementation of 57, CDCR has done a great job, so I support this bill.
Thank you.
Good morning. Dominique Nong from the Children's Defense Fund, California, in strong support.
Thank you.
Good morning. Edward Little with the Californians for Safety and Justice, in support.
Esteban Nunez, a proud co-sponsor of this bill, in strong support.
Glenn Backus, Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, in support.
Good morning. My name is Katie Dixon. I'm a policy fellow with LSPC and All of Us or None. I, too, am fortunate enough as somebody to have made it out of jail. I'm formerly incarcerated. I was locked up as a youth. I could only imagine those that's hoping and working hard for a release date. I fully support this bill, and I ask for your support as well.
Thank you.
London Crowdy, Policy Fellow at All of Us or None, Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, in strong support.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Marilyn Ralston. I'm with the California Coalition for Women Prisoners. We're a proud co-sponsor, and we stand in strong support.
Thank you.
Eric Henderson, Policy Director at Initiate Justice, proud co-sponsor.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Oh, opposition, I'm sorry. I just got back. I'm out of whack right now.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Larry Morris on behalf of the California District Attorneys Association. We regrettably are in opposition to Assemblyman Stone's AB 965. After the passage of Proposition 57, CDCR increased conduct credits and added categories of conduct credits. Prior to Prop 57, murderers earned 0 conduct credits pursuant to Penal Code Section 2933.2. A youthful offender, for example, sentenced to 25 years to life for first-degree murder, served an actual 25 years before being eligible for parole. Now, after Prop 57, that same inmate earns 20% credits and maybe more if he or she earns any of the other extra credit that CDCR created. Prop 57 credits of at least 20% will get the inmate to a parole hearing at year 20. 5 years before Penal Code Section 3051 would make the defendant eligible for a parole hearing. Similarly, elderly inmates are also now earning at least 20% conduct credits for their crimes unless sentenced to death or life without parole. It is important that we not shorten the time period specified in Penal Code Section 3051 and PC 3055 because inmates who were sentenced consecutively for multiple murders or serious sex crimes, for example, should not get a parole hearing any earlier than they can now under the Prop 57 changes. The very generous credits adopted by CDCR pursuant to Prop 57 already provide for early parole for offenders. Adding conduct credits to these two statutes not only gets violent offenders and sex offenders released even earlier, it exacerbates the problem of treating multiple crime offenders the same as one crime offenders. We believe the members of this committee agree that a person who commits 2 first-degree murders should face a more significant punishment than a person who commits 1 first-degree murder. Yet, under the proposed language of this bill, a person who commits 2 first-degree murders and is sentenced to 50 years to life would be eligible for a parole hearing at year 20, the same as a defendant sentenced for 1 murder. Similarly, the bill creates inequities based on the age of the offender at the time of the crime. Under existing law, a 30-year-old defendant currently sentenced to 50 years to life or a 50-year determinate sentence for forcible sex crimes at age 30 would be eligible for parole at the 40-year mark when he or she is 70 years old if he or she earns the 20% conduct credits. As currently worded, AB 965 would get this same sex offender to a parole hearing 10 years earlier, having served 30 continuous years, more than the 25 continuous years required by PC 3055. Consequently, defendants who commit their crimes later in life will have a huge advantage over younger offenders if conduct credits apply to reduce the requirement of 25 years of continuous incarceration for elderly parole. In sum, Proposition 57 already created very generous credits that provide for early parole for offenders. Adding conduct credits to PC 3051 and 3055 as this bill proposes not only gets violent offenders and sex offenders released even earlier, it exacerbates the problem of treating multiple crime offenders the same as one crime offenders and perpetuates the PC 3055 inequities that arise based on the age of an offender when he or she is sentenced. For these reasons, we ask for a no vote.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Chair and members, Jonathan Feldman with the California Police Chiefs Association. I'll echo the comments of my colleague, but I wanted to provide a little historical context into this that's important. The Police Chiefs Association worked with Senator Hancock on SB 260 and 261, the bill that originally created the youth offender parole process, and then the bill that jumped that, expanded it from 18 to 23. You know, we listened long and hard to the debate about, you know, these being young individuals that maybe hadn't had, you know, time to fully understand the decisions that they were making. We sympathized with that, and that's why we were neutral when those bills really went through this process. And then before, you know, even a few years into the program where we could evaluate how effective they were being, we decided to jump the age from 23 to 25. And now we're here back again, expanding the program, you know, the third time, without really kind of, I think, anyone understanding how it's effective, how it's being used right now, the impacts that it's having on the system. We've also had Prop 57, as the DA's noted, that has created additional credit earning opportunities for individuals incarcerated. And at some point, you know, we just have to ask ourselves the question, you know, when are we going to stop here? I mean, we went out on a limb to support youth offender parole, and the expansion of that all the way up to age 23. And then it seems like every time that, you know, we make a step forward, you know, we're asked to come back and go again and again and again. And that's where our concern here is. We've continued to erode consequences. At some point, that's going to have an impact on the public safety of our society. And I don't think we've evaluated the impact that's all this reform has had in the last 5 to 10 years. And this is just continuing to erode that system of accountability, and for those concerns, we are opposed.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chair and members, Corey Salzillo on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association in opposition.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Mr. Quirk.
Yeah, for me, first of all, Mr. Stone, I think you're one of our best legislators, and I very much appreciate you bringing this bill forward. For the recently released incarcerated person, it's amazing your poise after 20 years in prison to come in here and speak. I'm extremely impressed. So the question is, why are we putting people in jail and why do we let them out? I don't think a sex offender or a murderer is thinking when they shoot someone, gee whiz, they just passed a bill. And if I take courses, I can get out in 20 years instead of 25. That just doesn't happen. What this does do is it allows the parole board to make a decision at an earlier point if you have someone like the person who is before me right now. We don't need to keep people in prison who no longer pose a threat. And that, to me, is the ultimate objective that our prison should have, which is to get people to the point where they no longer pose a threat. And this is a way, when someone is incarcerated, to give them an incentive so that they'll be like the gentleman before me when they get out. Thank you. Oh, move the bill.
Any other comments or questions? None? Okay. You may close.
Thank you. And I will point out that opposition is really essentially relitigating the existing law. All we're trying to do here is tailor the credits from the youth offender parole and the elderly parole into the Prop 57. CDCR, in interpreting Prop 57, decided that they could not do that. We think they can, and that's why we're working very closely with CDCR. This is not necessarily going to let people out earlier because they still have to go to parole. I trust that process. We want to provide incentives that people do the work inside that they need to do in order to make the best case before parole. That, to me, is what the system is supposed to be about, holding people accountable, giving them the opportunity to address the issues they need to address, then come back into society. With that, I ask for your aye votes.
Thank you. And at some point, we're going to have to trust the system within CDCR. I mean, that's why I did the audit on the rehabilitation program, so that we can get some type of evaluation. I think the opposition is right. We need to start looking at all these programs in its totality and how it's impacted the community and how individuals like the one that came today, how they are impacting the community, instead of looking at the bad side of it. I honestly believe when we do that evaluation, we're going to get some very positive results from that. And I'm looking forward to that day when we look at all that we've done in the last 5-6 years, and to see that impact on the community, but also the impact on individuals like this young man here, his life and how it's changed him, and how we're better off as a society for doing this. And you're right, it doesn't guarantee that when they go before the parole board that they will be released. That is our backstop. And we need to trust that backstop with the parole hearing board, that they know, because they're inside and they're talking to these individuals, and CDCR and the CCPOA officers. They're all talking, and they know these individuals, and they should know who should and should not get out. And so I'm recommending aye.
On AB 965, the motion is due pass to the Appropriations Committee. Jones Sawyer.
Aye.
Jones Sawyer, aye. Lackey. Bauer Cahan. Deep. Kamlager Dove. Aye. Kamlager Dove, aye. Quirk. Aye. Quirk, aye. Santiago. Wicks. Aye. Wicks, aye.
On call needs one more.
Thank you.
You're welcome.